The single best thing you can do for your sleep, your energy, your mood, your wakefulness, your metabolism is to get natural light in your eyes early in the day. This sets in motion a huge number of different neurobiological and hormonal cascades that are good for you, reduces stress late at night, offsets cortisol, a million different things really that are good for you. I'm waking up these days around 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. I'm trying to go to sleep by about 10:30 p.m. Sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's 10. When I wake up, I make a beeline for sunlight. So I'm gonna get sunlight in my eyes. It takes about 10 minutes or so. If you live in a cloudy area, if you're in the UK in the winter or the summer, maybe you resort to some artificial light as a replacement. But as much as one can, get bright, natural, and if not natural, artificial light in your eyes early in the day without sunglasses. Contacts and eyeglasses are fine. Don't try and do it through a window or windshield. It's going to take far too long. So I get that. Ideally, that would be a walk, but sometimes we'll just go into the yard and have some coffee and soak in whatever sunlight through the clouds. If it's a cloudy, overcast day, it might be 20, 30 minutes. If it's a very bright day, it might just be a few minutes. But really, the quality studies on humans that have looked at this say try and get as much natural light as you can in the morning hours, whenever it is that is for you, especially the first 3 hours after waking. If you can work outside, great. If you can get near a window, because as opposed to just in a dark conference room, that's better. But if you can get outside, that would be fantastic. So I get sunlight, I hydrate, I drink water. I do everything I can to not do email, not do social media, and to take care of a few critical tasks. These days, I have this obsession with trying to do one cognitively hard thing a day and one physically hard thing a day. Now, not extreme physical, not David Goggins level workouts or anything, but in that 90 minutes, I'll typically try and read a research article start to finish, or I'll work on a document that I might be doing a grant or research paper or planning a podcast or researching a podcast. I try and get my brain into kind of a linear mode, because if I don't, the distraction that's created by social media and interactions with others can kind of wick out into the rest of the day. So I'm not necessarily trying to finish something in that time, but I try and do something challenging. I experience great pleasure from battling through something mentally challenging. I don't always succeed, but that's what I'm doing in that hour to 90 minutes. Then I do caffeine about 90 to 120 minutes after waking. I have a very consistent routine. I've done it for 30 years where I weight train for 45 minutes to an hour every other day. And occasionally I take an extra day off. And occasionally due to travel or other commitments, I'll occasionally double up 2 days and then take 2 days off.
Yep.
So it's really boring talk about workout schedules, but it's really simple. I'll do a pushing day, rest, pulling day, upper body push, rest, upper body pull, rest, and then legs, take 2 days off. Always jogging or skipping rope. Those are my favorite forms of cardio. Sometimes swimming, but typically I'll go running for 30 to 45 minutes. Or if I'm feeling a little bit lazier, because I always find the high intensity stuff to be easier than the long drawn out stuff, I'll sometimes throw on a weight vest, a 30 or 50 pound weight vest, and I'll go out for a shorter run. Yeah. So on the off days, I'm doing cardio, and sometimes that's in the morning, sometimes that's in the evening. I do not like to weight train in the second half of the day because I like to be really caffeinated when I weight train. I like to listen to loud, fast music. Most of the time, not always. I keep my phone out or off for most workouts. Podcasts maybe if I'm running, but I really try hard when I'm working out to just focus on the workout. And those workouts, the weight training workouts, are always 10 minutes or so of warm up and then no more than 40 to 50 minutes of really hard work. If I do train hard any longer, I don't recover enough to be able to come in a few days later. And when I train that way, I generally make pretty consistent progress.
And you're taking yourself up until maybe 10, 30, 11 a.m., something like that now?
Yeah, and then I'll eat my first real meal. Now, occasionally I'll wake up really hungry if I didn't eat that well the night before. But typically after I train, I like oatmeal, some fish oil, protein drink, and then maybe 90 to 120 minutes after that, I'll have a real lunch. My lunch is pretty much the biggest meal of the day. If I have my way, it'll be a steak, a salad. So I'll eat, and then I confess I usually will work a little bit more for about 30 minutes or an hour, typically email, and then I'll take a 10 to 30 minute nap. And then come back refreshed. Sometimes I wake up from naps, it's really pleasant. I'll occasionally do, if the nap is early enough in the day, afterwards I'll have a nice double espresso and get back into work. That's the hardest part of the day, actually. If I was well structured in the early part of the day, it's that 2 or 3 p.m. The key is then to try and get something really useful done cognitively again. So some people might look at this and say, wait, you're working for an hour in the morning and 30 minutes here and an hour in the afternoon. When are you actually working? But it's really about the depth of the trench when you're working. And so if I'm going to drop into something again for a few hours in the afternoon, I'm really going to drop into it. And that's typically phone off and out of the room. And my goal is to get to the evening time so that I can do the things that I want in the evening. I'm always setting a goal of the next time block. So this is something I've been doing for a long time, but even more so lately. I don't think my goal in the next hour is to do blank. I think, okay, if I get this workout done, then I'll be able to eat at more or less the same time, which I enjoy, and then something else will happen. So I'm very focused on what I'm doing, but I'm doing it for the purposes of like opening up the next door to the next thing. For me, eating between 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. is great. And what I can also tell you is that having a consistent meal schedule, meaning a feeding window, I don't know why this isn't discussed more. We absolutely know that that helps anchor your sleep schedule. And having an anchored sleep schedule helps anchor your light viewing schedule. So it all starts to piece together. The key thing is when you find an eating schedule that works for the other things that you need to do in life, it's really beautiful, because then you really start to exert some control over these energy systems. What we're talking about is focus and defocus. We're talking about focus and deliberate decompression, whether or not it's a nap or simply a walk. And food is a wonderful source of caloric energy. We need it at some point, but it also can create this parasympathetic response where we feel very tired, especially if you don't eat for long periods of time and then you eat substantial amount of starches, you will feel calmer and more relaxed and maybe sleepy and maybe brain foggy. So I do tend to eat some more starches in the evenings and fewer proteins. But ultimately what I'm interested in doing is maintaining the bodily health and aesthetic that I'm looking for, my blood lipids that I'm looking for, but I want to accomplish things in life. So I think if one gets too distracted by what's possible with nutrition, it can really take somebody off target. So once something works for you, I say just stick with it.
Lean into it.
Just lean into it, and that can change over time.
Or if you were to instruct someone to do the worst possible things in the morning to set their day up for failure, what would they be?
Staying in bed, curtains drawn, passively scrolling on social media. So people are on their phone, they're in bed, they're not getting enough light, or they just artificial light, or they're trying to get the sunlight through the window. Terrible. They are then going and sitting and getting into like hip flexor contraction. They're drinking coffee too early in the day. They aren't getting into any kind of movement, but it's mostly about the sort of randomization of activities. You're sort of making a cup of coffee while texting, not getting sunlight, then they're scattering that in with like a little bit of work, but then something hits that's stressful and they're diverting their attention. They're sort of building in this attention deficit-like disorder through behavior.
So they're not single tasking, they're not monotasking, and they're not being deliberate or intentional with the things that they're doing. They're just allowing the morning to kind of come and take them wherever the wind blows.
That's right. And I have to say, even though I describe my morning routine accurately, if I were to really optimize it, I would get up, I would hydrate, and I would immediately exercise. I would use that early, peaking of the cortisol response that comes with waking to get the body into action, because that's going to generate its own dopamine and adrenaline response. Anytime I've worked out really early, like if I have a flight and then moved into the other components of my day, I find that I feel better all day long. I also will say if I work out really early, maybe between 7 and 8 a.m., well, then my first meal might land at 9 a.m. Yeah. So, you need to be flexible with some of these things, but the general principles apply. I should say I have one rest day per week where I don't do any cardio or weight training. I really like having a complete rest day, but on that complete rest day, if I can, I'll do 20 minutes of sauna and then cold for 3 minutes, 20 minutes of sauna and then cold. I'll make the rest day reparative.
Yep.
And generally we make that social where we're talking about things.